Mr. Chris. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. How you been?
Really, really good. We're insanely busy because we're trying to wrap up Twisted Tower, which is our first-person shooter,
Right.
and it's like going from 2D to 3D. And you're making a 2D game. If you ever want to make a 3D game, reach out to me, and I'll just warn you about the thousands of things that are different. It's a totally different beast.
Yeah,
So it's been 3 years, and it's just been we're wrapping up development, and it's exhausting. So yeah.
cool. I think we had a similar production pipeline or timeline because we've been at it for about 3 years too. So interesting.
Have you really?
Yeah, coming on 3
Okay,
years.
so tell everybody listening what you're working on and what you've been working on for 3 freaking years. That's crazy.
Cool. Well, first off, I'm Chris Stair, and I'm the creative director of Squid Shock Studios, which is a studio that I started with my partner Trevor, and we are working on a Metroidvania called Bow Path of the Teal Lotus, which is approaching the end of production right now, and we have a release date which is going to be July 18th, 2024. So it's
Nice.
exciting, coming soon.
It's a beautiful game, and if anyone's listening who wants to wish list, the link is below. And it's got Hollow Knight vibes, which I'm sure you get that all the time.
We do.
Which is good, right?
Right.
Are you worried about people expecting Hollow Knight?
I think initially, I mean, Hollow Knight is such a huge like game to live up to. So if I don't, there are definitely people who are like, "Oh, this game is Hollow Knight in Japan," and that makes me a little nervous because obviously Hollow Knight is almost a for I know they were first time game developers, but for other first time game developers, it's actually an insane thing that they were able to pull off. That I think is kind of an unrealistic standard for 99.99% of first time game devs. It's truly
Yeah,
an
it is.
unrealistic standard to live up to. So, I think people will find that our game is unique in its own way and, like it for what it is rather than comparing it to Hollow Knight. That being said, we love the Hollow Knight community, and obviously a lot of them are interested in our game tangentially because of that.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because Twisted Tower, everyone's like, "Oh, this looks like BioShock," and that's our game that we're working on.
Yeah.
And it's constant. It's like all day, every day. BioShock, 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 BioShock. And I'll be honest, I don't even know what we could do differently to make it not look like BioShock. It's just ingrained in me because I like 1920s, 1930s. All my games are 1930s. I like bloom. I like post-processing effects. I like fog. I like smoke and vignettes and sepia tones. And so it just comes out and just sort of bathes the game in this BioShock atmosphere.
Yeah, I
And
think
so at this point, I'm just kind of like, it is what it is. I'm worried that people are going to expect BioShock, and I'm like, I hope you know that we're two full timers with some part timers. I hope you know, everybody, that we're not making a full AAA BioShock experience.
Right, yeah.
You know?
And I think a lot of those comparisons come from people. It's a younger crowd, and they are probably literally not even familiar with Art Deco. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't even see that as something that existed before video games did. It's like their only frame of reference is BioShock. So that's kind of why. Yeah, they go that route.
Hey, friend, I want to see you succeed as a game developer. I want to see you make a full-time salary as a game developer. See, the thing is, most game developers don't know how to actually make money with their game. And believe it or not, you can actually make a full-time salary with just a demo. I've done this 3 freaking times. And I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. Make a full-time salary with just a demo. Click the link below. It's a webinar, totally free, no gimmicks here. Check it out, watch the whole thing. You're going to learn a ton, and you're going to learn how to make 6 figures with just a demo. Cheers. So let's talk about this. So that's one aspect of potentially being nervous about launch, which is, are you gonna meet the hype? Are you gonna, because there is hype around your game, and Humble Bundle's doing a really good job promoting it. And Humble Games is your publisher.
Yeah, Humble Games.
Yeah. So you mentioned before this call that you're feeling kind of nervous about launch.
Sure.
Tell me about that. What are you nervous about?
It's a nervous excitement. I think for the past, near the end of production, the vibe of the game development changes quite drastically. You're no longer as in engine as much. It's not so much of that trailblazing creative endeavor that it usually is. You're not like trying to solve all these problems. It's a little bit of a quiet before the storm being release, in which you're just like, in our case, we're localizing, just doing a lot of like fixing typos, as well as porting, which I'm not actually involved in as much other than just doing the QA for the porting and making sure everything looks good and runs well. So it's a little bit of a quiet before the storm, and during those quiet times, you have a lot of time to think about everything that could possibly go wrong, right? And
Right.
I found myself in the past like 2 months or whatever getting kind of lost in all the numbers. Like I found this website called Video Game Insights. You must be aware of that.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
Well, maybe
No.
maybe you go on there and you start getting a little bit addicted to it, because what it is, it's this database where you can look at games and see their estimated amount of owners and estimated revenue even. So it'd be actually interesting to
goodness.
check your own games out on that to see like how accurate it is.
Okay, let's do it right now.
Oh, yeah?
I'm gonna pull up. I'm gonna do it right now. Do I have to sign in?
Oh no, it's just just Video Game Insights.
I'll tell you if it's accurate.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm looking at Pinstripe here. Gross revenue, it says $752,000. It's close.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a little. I think it might be overshooting. Let's look up Neversong. Neversong is actually undershooting. So I would say the margin of error for my games is somewhere around 20%.
Okay.
So there you go.
Yeah,
There's some more insights for you.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, I was actually pretty sure that it wasn't, probably like within that 20% margin. But yeah. Anyway, I'm like on this website, kind of like looking up games that are probably just games that I know of, right? And you kind of look at these games that you were very aware of, that you perhaps even enjoyed a lot, and maybe see that they didn't perform as well as you thought.
Right.
And you're like, wow, this game is amazing, and it didn't really succeed as like how I thought it might have. So,
what are some similar games that you've been looking up?
oh my god, I've looked up every single game like that is relevant.
Well, I'm looking up the first comp, which is Hollow Knight. So it looks like you're going to make around $63 million, Chris.
Right, yeah. That'd be nice. Yeah, games, just games, more popular indie games that came out in the last 3 to 5 years, and seeing that.
Okay, so what about what's one that's 2D that's similar to yours, platformy type games? I'm trying to think of some. Well, there's definitely.
I don't necessarily want to like call out like the devs here and like blast them about
I know.
their
I'm gonna
revenue.
blast Hades right now.
Okay.
No, I just want to see. I'm just looking up Hades here.
Okay. Yeah.
Hades.
is fine.
Hades is great. That's a ton of money. 131 million.
Wow.
Holy crap. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, you're looking up the numbers because now you're going from creative mode to business mode.
Exactly.
Right?
Wow, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Kind of shifted into
And that's
marketing mode,
stressful.
business mode. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I at the end of the day, like, I do believe this, that I just want to make enough money to be able to continue doing it. And obviously, it'd be nice to have like a nice little surplus to kind of maybe upgrade my lifestyle, like slightly, not get out of control. But ultimately, I want as many people to enjoy it and have fun playing it as possible. So
Yeah.
seems to be like on the right track.
For sure. So, you're nervous about the money side. That's probably, I feel like that's very normal. And if you're not thinking about money, you're not thinking about, well, look, when are you launching? Are you allowed to tell us?
July 18th.
July 18th. Okay. So you're launching in July. So you're literally thinking, okay, am I going to be able to survive in August? That's kind of the thought process.
I'm not necessarily like worried that short term, because we did have kind of a little bit of a surplus from the funds that we did receive, so we'll be good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
It's just more of a. I think like other members of the team, especially my partner, who we kind of like own the studio together. He might perhaps be like expecting a certain amount. I don't know. I just worry
Yeah.
more about people like who are in my orbit that I have to pay, rather than
Right.
myself. Really, like honestly.
Exactly. No, I feel the same way. I feel you. You know, it's when you start building a full-on studio, as opposed to owning a job, you're owning a business, right? A
Right.
lot of indie game developers own a job, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Owning your own job is great. You know, it's just you, and you only have to pay you. The moment you have a full-time team
Yeah.
and they've got a wife and kids and they've got a mortgage, it's a weird, because I've got that feeling right now. It's a weird feeling knowing not only do I have to provide for my family, my own family, I have to provide. It's not you provide. Well, it is and it isn't. Like you are providing an income for other people as well, in the sense that you're steering the ship, you know.
Right.
And so that's why launch is so freaking important, because it's this final lap where you've got to run your best race possible.
Yeah. And you're
And
already
prepare
so far.
up to
You're
launch.
so already exhausted that.
Oh
Yeah,
dude.
I felt exhausted. Approaching this final lap, and it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you just really got to do it.
Do you still like your game?
Wow. That's a love-hate relationship, in all honesty. It really is, because
Yeah, it is. It is.
it has been the source of my purpose for the past 3 years, and some days I love waking up and knowing that I have this creative endeavor to like invest completely into, and other days I'm like resentful that I have to do this instead of go to the beach or whatever. Or that's just an example. Or hang out, have a social life, which
I know.
if I'm being honest, suffered quite immensely during development.
Yeah.
It's not like tragic or anything, but it's just like definitely a difference when you have this relationship. It's a relationship that you have with your game. It's a baby that you
Absolutely.
always need to be tending to.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, the thing is that for me, I won't speak for you, but maybe you can confirm this or deny it. For me, I don't think there's ever a moment where my head isn't somewhere in the game,
yeah,
even when I'm outside of it.
yeah,
And, our game is called Twisted Tower. And so I tell my team all the time, I'm like, I tell Felipe, I say, he's the 3D artist, I say, dude, you've been living inside this tower. It's a creepy, like, kind of like Cinderella's castle kind of place. And I say, you've been living inside of this tower for 3 years. And he'll tell me that even I mean, he's not the director of the project, so there's not as much pressure. But he'll tell me that he can't get out of that tower. Like, even at night when he's trying to sleep, he's thinking about, how do I fix this and how do I fix that? And it's like your brain is like constantly firing on all cylinders all day and night.
yeah.
And I don't know if you felt that way.
I've absolutely felt the way, and I don't know if you felt this way, but like when I feel like when I'm in the game, working on the game, I'm thinking about my like actual life and what I should be accomplishing outside
Yeah.
the game. And when I'm spending time with like my family or my friends, I'm absolutely thinking about the game. So it's like
Yep.
you can never
Yep.
focus truly on
Yeah.
what's in front of you. It feels like sometimes.
For sure. And what I've learned, so I'm on my 8th year making indie games full time. What I've learned is that you don't have to let your brain be in control. Like, this is true with creativity. A friend of mine started making indie games, okay? And he's married, has kids. And he came up to me and he said, I can't do this anymore. I was like, why? And he just said, when I'm with my kids, I'm not thinking about my kids.
Yeah.
And it's impossible for me not to. It's just, that's the way my brain is. I said, everybody's brain, I don't know what it is about making games in particular. Let us know in the chat if you're listening. Whoever's listening, if you know this feeling, there is something, some phenomenon that happens with making indie games where you can't stop thinking about it. And I've learned that you don't just have to let your brain be in control. Like, it is possible to control your brain and get out of that obsessive mindset. And I think it's necessary because that mindset I don't feel like it's healthy for your game. Do you? Like, is it good to be thinking about your game that much? Isn't this going to cause Bo to become a bloated mess?
What do you think? I think it hurts more than it helps, but I do think it's necessary in the creative process. To be honest, you need a little bit of pain or chaotic energy sometimes to get you through it, just a little bit. But it needs to be balanced.
When was the chaotic energy the most intense? During development?
I think in the middle of development, where we kind of had the vertical slice, we had a few areas, and then I started to have to think about designing the rest of the game, which means like how do we get to the end? We kind of know where it starts, where it begins, and we know a little bit of the beginning. How do we get to the end? That involved like 4 additional areas, however many additional bosses, and at that point it became this, every day I would just have like a lack of confidence about which path to take. I don't know if you experience decision paralysis, where you just you see all the paths ahead of you, and you just can't move. So that was kind of I remember very clearly we were designing an area called the Ice Caverns, and I would just for like 2 weeks straight sit down on my computer and say, okay, we're designing ice caverns today, and just trashing ideas left and right over and over.
Yeah,
but eventually it clicked.
Man. I know it. Yeah, eventually it clicks. What's funny about Twisted Tower is what we're trying to avoid with that game. This is kind of a tangent, but it's similar to what you're saying. What we're trying to avoid with Twisted Tower is a lot of times you choose this, especially with linear storytelling games, but you're making a Metroidvania, so it's a little bit easier. Would you call it a Metroidvania, by the way?
Yeah. It's Metroidvania lightish, but it is a Metroidvania.
Right. And so for me, though, with like more linear like shooter games like Half-Life or BioShock, which is what we're sort of hearkening to, the problem is those games aren't streamable. Well, I mean, they are, but it's like, one streamer plays it, they get basically the same experience as everybody else.
I see.
It's just, you might get a headshot versus a leg shot. You might die more, but like overall you're getting basically the same linear experience. So, and it's similar to what you're saying with the Ice Caverns, which is like, I've got to make a decision on this level and how the player is going to experience it, because I want it to be like perfect for the player. And for me, what we decided to do is, I don't know if this is going to pay off, Chris, but what we decided to do was, let's just make 2 paths for every single level. So like, imagine Half-Life, but you can pick different doors, and it takes you down a completely different area of the level, and you can beat that level. And they're permanent decisions. So what we decided with Twisted Tower was, you're presented with 2 doors at the very beginning of every level, and you have to pick one door or the other. And going down that path is completely different. And so if you have 10 levels, but each level has 2 to 4 different paths, you get these crazy combinations per stream.
Oh, wow.
So one stream. So I think it's brilliant, but I think it might be a terrible idea too. I don't know. So the idea is to avoid streams getting stale. You know what I mean?
Right. And have you done the math on how many different combinations that was going to end up being?
I mean, I don't know how to do that math.
Me neither.
I'm terrible with this. I would assume you're multiplying it times itself. Like
it must be like a permutation type.
It's something exponential.
Yeah.
It's more than 20. It's more than 20. Like if I got 10 levels with 2 paths, 20. It's more than 20.
Yeah.
It's something exponential.
It's probably a really high number. Like.
I think so. Yeah.
Interesting.
So anyway, that for me helped our decision paralysis, because we were always like, well, this path maybe someone won't choose it, and at least they get all these other different paths in other levels. So it gives you this flexibility of like not worrying so much about the perfect level. But that for sure, decision paralysis has been a real problem with me as we approach launch. I don't know if your decision paralysis got worse as you approached launch.
Well, it went away once we decided that the game was finished, right? And now we're just doing all the boring like logistical stuff. So the decision process is completely gone. But it was really bad while I was there. Like, yeah, it was terrible.
What was driving it?
I think a little bit of my I am like ADHD, adult ADHD. So I think I don't know if we want to go into that, but that also
that's great. Let's do it.
Yeah, that really affected me, and I was actually diagnosed like because I was making the game, and I started to like realize, because it wasn't as apparent before, but once I got into a more director role, it became very clear that there was something stopping me from, or I would just be switching tasks, like I was very fidgety with switching tasks. I would never complete a certain task, and it would just be an infinite cascade of like switching tasks and never finishing a single one. So once I identified that, I was able to like, once you know that you have like, what your issue is, you can start really taking steps. There's all kinds of great resources out there to help like manage yourself if you know what your problem is. So that helped, but also like I got help from like game designers. So we brought on another game designer at some point. His name is Milton Guasti, who worked on Ori and the Will of the Wisp. And and when he came on, he opened my eyes he is a consummate professional. The way when I speak with him and the questions he asks and how he's able to digest everything and kind of create these very detailed game design documents based off of all my input and stuff, and his ability to block out, just creativity. It just comes with his experience. Also, he's probably innately very talented, but he's been having that person with that kind of experience join the team also really showed me how to organize things a lot, and like the so to speak correct way to design a game.
Sure. I don't think that most game developers, but artists, just artists in general, I don't think they realize how much help a lot of our heroes get.
Yeah.
So one of my heroes is Danny Elfman, the composer for a lot of Tim Burton films.
Love him.
All Tim Burton films. I'm pretty sure every single one. And I was doing a little bit of research on him, and he will sort of just free flow. He'll feel it out and just plug in MIDI instruments, software instruments on his computer. So I'm like, oh, he's doing what I do. Like he's not like writing it on paper, and at a piano scoring his music. He's just plugging it onto a computer, and then what he does is he gets a composer, a professional, I don't know what you call them,
producer, maybe
someone who can a transposer or something. They could transpose it onto paper and then orchestrate it. So he's hiring someone to orchestrate it, and he's not even orchestrating the orchestra.
Right.
So literally, he's just sitting there in his office, plugging away on a computer, and then all this stuff happens after the fact. But he's the impetus, and he's the mind behind it. And I look at you and I go, man, I wouldn't want to. I don't know you that well, so I would just say if I was diagnosed with ADHD, which my wife says I probably would be, I just haven't gone to the doctor about it. And part of the reason why is about what I'm about to say, which is there is some kind of strange benefit to being wild-minded.
Yeah.
Where it's like it's like fireworks constantly.
It does.
There's something about that. If you can get someone to catch it into like almost like it's a rain funnel.
Yeah.
And that's what you got. You got someone to capture those crazy ideas and orchestrate them and organize them. That is awesome. And that's what makes a great creative director. Someone who can like spitball all these crazy ideas, and it's like every day it's something different. If you can have a team member who, what you would call him a gatekeeper. A gatekeeper is somebody who comes in. It's a personality type that I learned about. Somebody who's like stands at the gate and they say, okay, I know that Thomas is kind of nuts. I know that Chris has all these crazy ideas. So I'm going to have my legal pad and I'm going to write down what's going to work for our project schedule, what's not, and what's good game design, what's not good game design. And I'm going to organize this into something that actually can be produced.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, creative energy is quite often really chaotic. And it sounds like you just described a babysitter, by the way. Like basically like this precocious child who like can't do anything by himself and needs like you know, in the best way possible, needs to like funnel that, like it's a very special, almost this sounds so pretentious, but mystical like inspiration that comes to certain people. And I think like in the creative mind, there's just so many connections being made all the time that oftentimes it takes a third party to kind of look at what's like the storm from afar and kind of glean what is actually what is actually good, what's actually going to be fun, what's going to work, and stuff like that.
For sure. People listening are probably thinking, well, Thomas and Chris have money to pay someone to do this. Right. And what I want to say is, I don't think everybody knows that Chris is, you started making games. You started learning how to make games I think it was 3 years ago, right?
Yeah, the timeline's fuzzy, but about 3 years ago, yeah.
So you're right alongside everybody listening. It's just
sure.
You did something right. And I want to figure out, can you take me through some steps of how you did what you did? Like, you're sitting here as a full-time game developer, and 99% of people listening right now are like, I would kill for that. How did you do it?
I think if you're watching this video, you of course have some sort of desire to make a game, or tangentially maybe you're just interested in game design. It's different for everyone. Let's just get that out there, that caveat. It's going to be different for everyone. I'm just going to tell you my experience. I'm the kind of person who needs a mentor, someone that I can just ask a bunch of, like, vomit a bunch of questions about everything, because I'm the kind of person who needs to know. I love to know how things work and why they work, rather than just rather I like to know how things. You might have to cut that. I like.
No, we're gonna keep it. We're gonna keep everything here. Keep it as real as possible.
Cool. I stumbled, but I'm the kind of guy who likes to know why things work. I ask a lot of questions why, to the point that my team is like super annoyed with me because they think I'm like testing them or something, but I'm actually like trying to engage in like some sort of dialogue. But so I always like to have a mentor, of someone who like has experience. Maybe they've already shipped a game. If you don't have access to that kind of person, you can find access to that kind of person fairly easily on forums, Reddit, Discord groups, and stuff like that. Like-minded individuals who will be more than happy to help because they've helped me. And
right.
Obviously, Thomas, you're one of them, right? I think a lot of people know this, but I actually was a student in your, like, one of the very early students in your full-time game dev course. And this is not an ad or anything. I'm just speaking from like my experience. So in a lot of ways, like, Thomas was my mentor in that course that he created. And Thomas, the way Thomas teaches, or I should speak to you. Okay. The way you teach.
You do whatever you want. You can speak however you want.
The way you teach is somehow clicked with me so well, because I think we kind of have a similar background in like graphic design. You're a very creative guy. You look at even the technical aspects of things very creatively and visually.
Well, side note here, the technical side, when someone tells me to do it the right way, I immediately do it the wrong way on purpose, because I get frustrated. I get frustrated when technicians say you have to do it this way, and oftentimes, this is just a side note, oftentimes what happens is when they go, this is the right way to code, this is the right way to make a game, blah, 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 that oftentimes weighs people down and they don't finish their freaking game.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And that's what bugs me so much about the technical side. So yes, I approach the technical side chaotically, and it's almost on purpose. But anyway, go ahead.
Right, and I think that annoys Trevor sometimes, because when he was learning to code and stuff, like you'd go on forums and people's like, this is the correct way to do it. There is no correct way to do it. And oftentimes, even if when you do something incorrectly, it leads to these advancements and these really cool happy accidents. So, those people on the internet who sound like they really know what they're talking about don't necessarily understand the bigger picture. They're probably very talented, but anyways, so taking that course was a big step. Everything just clicked. Those videos, like, you made it seem so simple. It didn't feel like this cumbersome, like, coding course where people are just like, there's a monotonous guy talking to you in a camera telling you what a function does. So it just clicked. And also you packaged it with like you zoomed out and you said, how do we get funding? How do we market? Like every single facet of game design, because you're experienced in the field. So once, like, I as a creative director, I suppose, like, I'm a big picture guy, right? So once I was able to see the full picture, and you and feeling confident that you would be able to show me, or at least let me see all the elements that go into shipping a game, it felt so much more manageable, because I could see it from a bird's eye view of all the elements that you need to ship a game, which are a lot, and it's extremely difficult, but it felt manageable when you're able to see it from above.
You know what's so funny is that, one of the vices of humanity is focusing on money. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't focus on money too much because it'll make your life miserable. Mm-hmm. But at the opposite end, or the flip side of the coin, is if you can focus on money when it comes to making your game, it actually makes things so much clearer. Like, for me, I don't know if this was true for you, but like, it's like, how do I make some money off this game and go full time? Like, that to me has always been the question. Cause like, once you get the money, then making the game is much easier, because it's like, well, now I got the time to do it. I can do it full time. I don't have to worry about launch. I don't have to get paranoid about making enough money. And I can hire out people, and I can get some help, or even just like part-time contract workers, right? So like, the idea of like the initial, this is what I tell anybody who's saying, hey, I want to make a game, what do I need to do? The first thing I tell them is, what's your freaking hook? What is your hook? Because if you don't have a hook, you're not going to sell anything. Most likely. And so people think, well, why is Thomas bringing up the hook? Shouldn't I learn how to code? No. Figure out your hook, because I don't want you to learn how to code if you can't sell your hook.
You can learn to code while you're making the game. Don't worry about that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. Dude, I remember this like it was yesterday. I was out in, I think it was in San Francisco or something, for some reason, for some game show. And I reached out to one of the creators of Earthworm Jim, and I messaged him and I said, can I get lunch with you? And for some reason he said yes. And so I drove down to some seaside town. It was really bougie, really nice. And he took me out to lunch, and I gave him this whole pitch about this like game idea I had. I had printed this thing out. I spent 2 weeks putting together this pitch for him just because I wanted his ideas. I spent all this money on the game mechanics and the artwork and the style. And he pushed it aside and he said, there's no hook. Now, he didn't say it as brutally as that, but he said, you've got to have a hook here, man. Like, there's nothing else that you need to focus on other than that one sentence hook. And for you, one of your hooks is Hollow Knight, but in Japan. And I think that's great. And as much as maybe I would be scared of being associated with Hollow Knight because it's hard to compete, it is a really good hook. And so for you,
we're also referred
to
as Silk Song at Home.
Yeah,
that's another one of our hooks.
There you go. Yeah, so like for you, like it was that helpful to you, like bringing everything into this sort of like aiming the gun before you worry about how to shoot the gun. Was that helpful to you? Aiming it towards a target
You,
of
you,
how do I get
you
funded?
know, if you're talking in relation to like how you preach that, I think like earlier on when I was a student of yours, you didn't quite preach that as hard. You definitely
Yeah, I
probably
don't think I
mentioned it, but
did.
now you're going full on, and I really appreciate that because it is actually the main thing, the first thing that you should be
Yeah,
doing.
yeah,
So I don't know if anything we did in that way was intentional, like getting a
yeah,
hook or anything like that. I think it was really like the whole idea for Bo was just based off what I wanted to see in a video game, and all of the elements of really cool things that I've seen in other video games that I wanted to like creatively explore in my own game.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's kind of how that happened.
Mm. Okay, so you took Thomas's course. I'll pay you $300 after this call. By the way, no, I'm kidding.
Cha-ching.
Thank you for being so kind about that. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, I
Um,
quite honestly, I would have never started if I hadn't just one night randomly said, "Okay, let's watch some videos, Thomas Brush
yeah.
videos." Yeah, seriously.
Well, that's great, man. I appreciate that. It really does mean a lot to me. So I helped sort of show you the way, like a Jedi. Um, and what about the technical side? Like, okay, so Thomas shows you how to get funding. Thomas shows you how to market a game. But like, was it difficult for you to learn how to make a game in Unity?
You definitely gave us some building blocks when you were, in your videos. I think there was a period where things start to click. You start to really understand like prefabs or whatever, and just
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning it's so overwhelming. You're like, a scene? What is a scene? Like, what are the
Why isn't
implications?
it called a level?
Right. What are the implications of making a new scene? Like, how do I connect them or whatever? There's so many things. But
Yeah.
after a while, like I felt like we were while I was taking your course, you were teaching me how to crawl, walk, and then at some point, I felt confident enough to like deviate. Right. So that probably came when Trevor, our lead programmer, came on. When I realized coding wasn't perhaps my forte, I was more of the creative, on the creative art side, right, and
Mm-hmm.
making the
Mm-hmm.
art. So when he came on and he kind of had his own idea of how to do things, um, you know, everything started to mesh a little bit differently. Uh, I don't know. I think you just practice something every day and it just becomes so comfortable. Like all the hotkeys and I mean, I probably have my 10,000 hours in Unity at this point, and
Yeah.
like,
Well, how did you keep that motivation though? Like one of the big problems I would say with majority of people listening right now, they're excited by this conversation, especially if they've been sticking around for 38 minutes here. They're excited. It's so exciting and they're motivated, but they know deep down. They know themselves. I'm not going to follow through. Give it 2 weeks and I'm going to quit my game. Why is it you put in all those hours? What kept you going and what kept the fire burning?
I think a little bit of it is probably like your own character, or my own character. I never, I tend, I probably quit things before, but I'm the kind of person who always follows through to the end of something and never quits. Like even in,
Yeah.
stupid example, but even like playing League of Legends and everyone's like, let's surrender, like this game is lost. I'm like, even if all of you leave right now, I am going to 1v5 this enemy team just because I know it's going to make me better,
Yeah.
challenge me, even though like the odds are impossible. Like somehow your investment is not going to be wasted. It's not about winning. It's about like pushing through to the end and seeing what you can learn along the way. So I don't know. My characters, I'm like kind of a stubborn guy who just doesn't quit. And in addition to that, like once we started getting team members on, I felt so responsible for their livelihoods and their. I wanted to also see them succeed. I became kind of like, I'm not that like old or anything, but I felt like a father figure to some of these.
Yeah.
A lot of the our team was pretty green, so I
Hmm.
they became my friends, and I wanted to support them and see them succeed and like say, hey, you can do this, like push them a little further. Like for example, one of the artists that I brought on, Alex, he was not an animator, but one day he like randomly showed me like this goof off project he worked on with animation, and then I was like, wow, I can identify that he had some chops, right? So I gave him all the tools he needed to succeed. Whether I bought him like this little course or whatever, and then he ended up doing like some of the craziest, best animations in the game just because like,
wow, dude.
Yeah. So I think I basically felt a lot of responsibility to my team and also the Kickstarter backers, right? They gave us money. Every dollar was a vote of confidence that we would complete this game. And that caused a lot of anxiety for sure. But ultimately that is one of the biggest reasons why I was able to see it through to the end. Is because of,
well, you just mentioned how you made it from the 15th lap or the 15th mile to the 23rd mile. Let's say you're running a marathon.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of people haven't even figured out how to stay motivated past the first mile. What I mean is, once you get kickstarted, it's not hard to be motivated after you've been kickstarted. After you've been kickstarted, it's like, I don't want to get sued. So of course you're going to follow through.
Right.
Here's a better question that I think people are wondering. How did Chris go from zero to having the motivation to create some kind of Kickstarter campaign, and then get that and have the balls to hit submit? Like it's a really scary thing to do a Kickstarter campaign. It's so scary.
Yeah.
Because you know that once you get your first dollar, you have to finish.
Yeah.
Right? So, what motivated you to get to the Kickstarter campaign, and how did you have enough courage to release that?
I think in my life, I always wanted to somehow create something like a big creative project that would last. People would see, people would recognize, people would resonate with. Because I grew up as a visual artist my whole life, and there was a long stretch where I abandoned it, right? I wasn't really doing anything creative. And when COVID hit, like that, I felt like that was the opportunity to really put my money where my mouth was and really buckle down and do something that would have some sort of legacy in the creative field. And video game design was like a coalescence of all that. So I don't know, it's just like this inherent drive I have, and maybe some people don't have that, like and maybe if you see yourself giving up after 2 weeks, either you don't have enough drive, or you need to find someone who has drive and work with them and team up. I think like it's important that one person in the team has that drive and has like leadership qualities, communication skills to help keep the fire lit. Because the fire will go out unless you need a dedicated what are those people called that keep fires going in like blacksmiths? Bellows? Yeah.
Yeah, bellows, yeah.
Yeah, you
a
need a dedicated
or something, I don't know.
Yeah, that thing, right? You need a dedicated person on your team, and oftentimes that's the director.
Yeah.
Who juggles everything from HR to like I don't know, keeping people motivated and morale up and stuff like that. So that's part of that role. So if you find yourself as a person who gives up easily, like team up, find someone who can help you. I don't know. It all goes back to finding people to help you.
For sure. Oh yeah, I'm all about it. When you said that you used to be creative when you were younger, and then you became not creative, and I think you were working a job or something that was uncreative.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden when COVID hit, you were like, time to buckle down. What I translated you when you said that, what I heard was, I have really high standards for myself. And it's because of something I believed about myself when I was younger. Is that true? Like when you were a kid and when you were a teenager, did you think of yourself as, I'm the artist? That was your identity. I'm the artist.
Absolutely. Like I was the art kid. Everyone knew I was the art kid. I was the kid who was good at drawing or whatever, right? So maybe that's ingrained in me somehow, like deep in my psyche, that man, this is your identity, man.
Yep.
Or there was my identity, and it's like maybe it's coming back now.
Did your parents put that into you?
No, I mean my mom. I mean, they supported me. Like, I love my parents. They totally supported all my artistic endeavors. Are they creative people? I wouldn't really say so.
Yeah. But did they say that you were that? Did they?
Yes.
My question is, who labeled you that first?
Oh, wow. Perhaps my grandmother, because she was an artist. Actually, but she's not my biological grandmother, but she, so I didn't get like the genetic artistic talent from her, but she would buy me art supplies, right? Like, she just kind of heard that I liked art. And because she was kind of a painter, just a hobbyist, she was like, oh, this is my chance to like invest in him. So she would always support me. And she passed like when I was 15 or something, and I felt a lot of duty to her to kind of like do something artistic in my life that would withstand the test of time in some way.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is to psychoanalyze why somebody quits something. Like the bad kind of quitting. Not the good kind. The good kind of quitting is like quitting nicotine, which I've quit for 2 months now.
Congrats.
I love nicotine. It's my favorite thing, and it's probably because of some ADHD kind of thing where I just love that focus I get.
Probably.
So I was like, I gotta quit this. So I quit. But there's a good kind of, there's a bad kind of quitting, and I love figuring it out why people quit things. I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is, but motivation comes from identity, in my opinion. So motivation comes from this place of I am something, and so therefore I will do something. Human beings, we love to think of ourselves as like characters in a book. Like we create this identity or this avatar of who we are. The problem is most people, 80% of people, I think, have this really crappy view of themselves. And so they're like, I'm the guy who quits. They lie to themselves. I'm the guy or gal who quits things. So I'm going to quit this thing. I'm the guy or gal who gets up at 9 a.m. That's who I am. I'm the person who stays up till 3 a.m. watching Netflix. That's who I am. And they hate themselves. And then if you go down the ladder or the funnel even more, I've found that the reason why people have a bad identity of who they are is because someone in their family or their close community, number one, dismantled who they were with the way they spoke about them, or number two, were apathetic in their delivery or in their assigning an identity to that person. So like your grandmother, she did a good job of like putting that label on you in a gentle way. It sounds like she was great.
It was great.
And it was like, Chris is an artist. Chris is an artist. And so you started to hear that and you go, okay. And you start to tell yourself this, I am an artist. That is who I am. Even though maybe you sucked. I don't know. Some people really suck, but because they've been given that label, they nurture it and they have the courage to keep nurturing it. And so my heart hurts with people listening right now. And let me know in the comments if you know what I'm talking about, where nobody nurtured an identity for you, or people dismantled an identity for you. And what that does is that causes you to lie to yourself about who you are. And so when you get motivated by something like this podcast, next week you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, I'm not that. I can't be a game developer. I can't be an artist. And it's because you weren't nurtured in a specific kind of identity. And I just wish that there was a magical spell that would help people, allow people to see themselves in an identity that they've never seen before. Like for me, I don't find it very difficult to go, you know what? I'm the tattoo guy. Even though I have no tattoos and I'm kind of dorky, I'm the tattoo guy. And then all of a sudden, bang, Thomas is the tattoo guy in his head and he's not afraid to get a tattoo, right? Or what I did was I said, when I was like 20, I was like, I'm going to be the fitness guy. bang, boom. Even though I was scrawny, I was like, oh, I'm the fitness guy. That's who I am. And you snap your fingers and you become this identity, and it's fun. There's no pressure, and then you stay that way, and it's exciting. Do you know what I'm not sure if I'm rambling here.
I've absolutely felt exactly what you're saying in different facets of my life, for sure. I've never quite looked at it that way, but everything fits, when you explain it like that.
Because most people, they peg themselves as something, and then they gravitate towards where they've pegged themselves.
Absolutely.
And so that's why nobody becomes a game developer like fully. Most people don't, because they quit something because they don't have high standards for that identity. You do. You're like, I'm the artist, so of course I'm going to finish my game.
Right, and
I'm the artist.
And another thing I want to talk about with that is, like, sometimes people don't realize what their talents are, and sometimes they do. So for example, I was an artist, so I knew that I had some talent there, but I also have skills in communication and leadership, just because I was in the Boy Scouts. I'm actually an Eagle Scout. So like that
Nice.
really taught me a lot about like leadership, and I did also a leadership program after high school. So I think sometimes when people want to do game dev, they think, and especially solo devs, they often are very good at one thing, like art or coding, right? But don't understand that in order to like actually ship a game and see it to like the final, the end of production, you need a guy, a producer, a director, or some very strong person with strong leadership qualities to see that through. And maybe that's not you, but I think like that is a very key thing, kind of like a shepherd or someone who can, like a very strong character who can push you. And maybe that's not you, and that's fine. But I think like a lot of game dev people or people who are just getting started in game dev, who have never shipped a game, maybe quit several times, that's one piece that they're lacking. Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, so it sounds like and I love to identify and pinpoint potential leaders. I like to think I'm a good leader.
You definitely are.
And thank you. And it sounds like you are as well. And when I find somebody who could be a leader, but they don't know that they could be,
I love that.
Fires me up.
Yeah.
I love it so much. I get so excited. Like, and this relates to just pinpointing potential business owners and potential entrepreneurs. Like that, you get somebody who's like, they seem like they could be an entrepreneur. I get so excited.
Yeah.
I just want to go get lunch with them and just tell them everything. But there's also part of me that I realize this is a weakness I have, which is not everybody's meant to lead.
That's correct.
And not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. Instead, some people are meant to, and they want to, be the gear among other gears,
Exactly.
And if that's you in the comments, I think it's great. In the audience listening, I think Chris's advice is really good here, which is go find somebody who can lead you, and maybe you'll be fulfilled in the game industry.
Yeah.
And
it sounds kind of scary or like negative almost. Someone's going to lead me, like some sort of like overlord that's going to tell me what to do. But in the ideal situation, it's a friend or someone that it's a conversation, it's a dialogue. You're working together, and this person's just like filling in a missing piece, and you're filling in their missing piece because they can't draw necessarily or compose music or whatever it is. There are few people, Thomas is one of them, who can do everything. Very extremely rare, but like it's very likely that some people are hyper talented at one thing and completely skillless in another thing, and that's why you need a team.
I gotcha. So moving on to sort of wrapping up, getting to Kickstarter, you wanted to make this your moment where you followed through with something creative and you made something happen for yourself. So that was sort of the driving force,
Right,
for getting to Kickstarter, right? You got funded on Kickstarter.
Yep.
And that we could go all into Kickstarter, but that's probably for another podcast. And then after that, you got funded by Humble Games, right?
Yeah. That was about a year after the Kickstarter.
So let's talk really quickly, just in general, okay? General advice for people listening. Kickstarter and getting a publisher, are they similar? Is the process similar to getting funding from both?
Well, I think we had probably a unique situation. We actually didn't reach out to any publishers in our development, and we were approached before Kickstarter. So
what?
Yeah, and I'll tell you how we did that. I saw some GDC talk. I couldn't tell you which one it was. It was some guy, and he said, show your game early and often. And the way he emphasized that, and when I took that in and truly understood what that meant, like, it really resonated with me. So I did that. I showed, like, even the crappiest, like, very prototypical stuff early and often, and I paid attention to what people were saying, like, oh wow, this element's cool, and I would look into, like, why they thought this certain element was cool, and kind of like getting a bigger picture of what was special about the game, and then doubling down on it. So it's a little bit of A/B testing. This is something you're really good at too, Thomas, by the way. You do that kind of stuff all the time on Twitter, and even when you're doing your game dev vlogs, right?
Yep. It's also, it could be a problem as well, because sometimes you just have to go with your gut.
Sure.
And you can't rely fully on the audience.
Right.
And absolutely.
Yeah. But in the beginning it was super helpful, because as artists, sometimes you're like, don't know what you produce a lot of cool things, but you don't necessarily know what other people will find cool. You're happy with any of the choices, but maybe one is
AKA people will buy, right? If someone finds it cool, that means they're more likely to buy. So that it's important to sample your audience, because it tells you, is this game going to sell?
Yeah.
You know,
a positive response from someone who saw it is them saying, wow, this has value, or this art style has value, because they're responding positively to it, and value equals money. So
money.
Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, money is just a form of someone showing that your art is valuable to them.
To them personally.
Yeah,
that's right.
Right. That's what
a lot of people think of money as, like, you're taking it from somebody. It's like if I'm passionate about making money from my games, it's because Thomas is, like, stealing people's money. And it's like, I'm not stealing $15 from somebody when they buy a game. They in their minds, they said, this game is worth more than my $15. So let's do a trade.
Yeah.
And that's great. You know, that's what you want. You want to be able to make a game that, like you said, is perceived as valuable to somebody else. And your own ideas and what you find exciting and what you think looks cool isn't necessarily what's valuable to someone else.
Right.
And your job as a game dev, and you're really good at this, your job as a game dev is to half of yourself is somebody who cares about what your audience's perception of your game is, and then the other half of yourself is what your perception of the game is. And you're kind of like split. You got this split personality between wanting what your audience wants and wanting what you want. And to balance that and to figure out which instinct and impulse to use, your audience's or yours, is what I think what differentiates a wealthy game developer and a not wealthy game developer. That's purely a monetary discussion. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person if you can't provide value to the audience. If you can't, you're not going to make money, that's for sure. But it doesn't mean you're a bad person or a bad artist. Not in the least. Like F. Scott Fitzgerald, one of my favorite writers, wasn't very profitable in his lifetime. So he was very bad at identifying value. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't the best at identifying value or what his audience finds valuable in his writing at that era. But I mean, goodness, look at his legacy now. It's very valuable, in especially in The Great Gatsby. So it's a difficult conversation to have, because you need to worry about your current game sales, but potentially you could leave a legacy with something that you just put your heart into that wasn't valuable at the time. Right.
And I think if you're lucky, your what you think is cool is going to be in parity with what the audience thinks is cool. And it's not just necessarily luck, like, right? You as a game developer, you need to be a heavy consumer of media, movies, books, games, obviously, anime, cartoons, different things that are pushing the boundaries of like what is visually striking, what is resonating with people narratively. And the more you build up that Rolodex, the better your taste will become. And the better your taste is, the more easily you're able to create something that is going to appeal to people. So
that's really good, dude. That just made me think about how my daughter, she's 6. She said, I think she said she doesn't like Coke or something. And I was like, well, let's just, I don't want her to love Coca-Cola because it's terrible for you. But I was like, try it out, see what you think. So she's like, no, I really don't want it. And so I said, no, just take a sip. And she took a sip and loved it, obviously. It's delicious. And so point being, though, is that as an artist, you may say, but I'm only going to make a game or an art style or whatever that is what I love. I'm not going to step into all these other crazy ideas that young players are playing. I say that all the time. Like, I'm always like, I don't want to play Gen Z games because they confuse me. But sometimes you just have to play them to figure out why they're appealing. And then maybe that'll change your taste buds to then be excited to make that kind of game. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, and nothing against people who want to make a game that only they will like. But if their goal is to be financially successful, that is not going to happen. Because
probably not.
It's just
Probably
logically
not.
That's not going to happen. I mean, it could happen just by some chance, but you have all these tools to like see what people like. We can display our game on Twitter or YouTube, whatever, right? Like a lot of these very successful games recently have had these crazy social media campaigns, or even like Choo Choo Charles, his meteoric rise on YouTube created an immensely successful game because he was making the content for it. And I forget where I was going with that, but
and that is ultimately what I think you've been able to do with Bo. It's like you stayed Chris the artist that your grandmother instilled in you, but you also cared about how do I build a team and how do we make some money off this thing before we even release it. And by make money, I don't mean you're like, give me some money and let's pocket it. No, it's like you got the funding to actually do this thing full time, and you did that before you even launched your game. I think that's really, really impressive, and you did it in 3 years. So as we wrap up here, man, it looks like we've been going for about an hour here. Is there anything else you wanted to leave the audience?
Yeah, I guess some plug stuff. We will be,
sure.
if that's okay. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but June 10th to the 17th, our free demo will be live during the Steam Next Fest. So go ahead and download it, try it, let us know what you think, and give us a wish list. Like we really appreciate wish lists, and the game comes out on July 18th. So see you there.
Nice. If anybody's curious, and this will hopefully give you more wish lists, Chris. If anybody's curious, wish lists during a Next Fest, that's when you get the most wish lists.
Right.
That's at least traditionally what we're told. So Next Fest is insanely important for Chris. So if you guys thought Chris was helpful today, click the link below and support Chris by wish listing. All right, man. Thanks for hanging out, dude. I learned so much. That was so fun.
Likewise. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah, dude. Cheers. Wish list below, guys. Get over here. Get down. Hey, thanks for watching. By the way, if you haven't downloaded that free 2D game kit below, click below. It's my treat to you. I used this game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and I actually got to play it with him in front of his audience, which was really cool. This game kit is totally free. It's my treat to you, and you can use it however you want. You can make a commercial game and make $1 million off this game kit. I don't care. Or you could just use it for a hobby project. It's my treat to you. And by the way, if you haven't clicked like, that would mean a ton to me. Hit subscribe. And also, this is important, hit that notification bell. Here's why. If you get notified of when I'm live, you can watch me make my next game. And let me know in the chat what you think about the game or any ideas you have, and you might just show up. Your chat might just show up in the next video that I upload. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye. I love you too.